Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Glory to Prabhupada. We'll continue our discussion on the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, beginning from verse 33. Arjun vacha yoyam yogastvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyam na pashyami chanchalatvat sthitim stiram. Arjun said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. So, in 4 verses, 33 to 36, Arjun will bring forth the impediment of the process of Astanga Yoga that Krishna has outlined. So Krishna has already spoken 23 verses glorifying Astanga Yoga and its results. He has spoken about the Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagwan realization as a result of the successful execution of Dhyana Yoga. And then finally, as a symptom of this exalted state, Krishna had said that such a person becomes samadrishti, which means that he sees everything as the same, and samabuddhi, which means he sees everyone as the same. Now, while one can be equal towards the neutral and the friends, it's very difficult to extend the same vision to enemies. Right? So, and the Acharyas explain that Arjuna is talking about the nature of the mind in this. So when Arjuna says that the mind is restless and unsteady, he is not really speaking so much about the process of samadhi, where the mind focuses on the object. He is even speaking about the ability of the mind to develop the characteristics of a successful yogi. So a restless and unsteady mind will make this distinction that between friend and foe, between those who are your benefactors and those who desire harm to you. So the problem that Arjuna is presenting is that even if somehow temporarily one is able to bring the mind to this situation of being samadrishti and samabuddhi, but because the mind is unsteady, chanchalat, that situation will not last. So, for instance, it would be impossible for Arjun to be equal at all times to the happiness and distress of Yudhishthira and Duryodhana. Right? And Arjun, being a practical person, is clearly bringing it forth. So, somehow, if one is even able to bring oneself to this position, because the mind is chanchalatvat and unsteady, asthiram, so the situation will not last. Now, interestingly, Krishna himself spoke about this in verse 26 when he said yato yato nischalati manas chanchalat asthiram. So Arjuna is almost echoing back what Krishna had spoken. So there Krishna had spoken this verse from the perspective of one of the obstacles to overcome. So whenever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must bring it back under the control. And there Krishna had presented it more as an activity, that this is what you need to do. What Arjuna is saying is that you say that I need to do it, but I cannot do it, because what I need to do and through which I need to do are the same. That the same mind that I'm trying to control is controlled by the mind itself. So Arjun, being a practical person, is expressing his concerns. So Prabhupada says, as a practical man, Arjun thought it was impossible to follow this process of yoga, even though he was favorably endowed in many ways. So Prabhupada says, now he's bringing this thing in perspective for us, that Arjun was in the Dwapar Yuga. He belonged to an exalted family. So Arjun's father was Indra, right? So belongs to an exalted family with divine qualities. And then Prabhupada said that he is the most intimate friend of Krishna. And even he is saying that this is difficult to do. So Prabhupada said that if this were so for Arjun, what about the present day? Those who are imitating the yoga system in different so-called schools and societies, although complacent, are certainly wasting their time. They are completely in ignorance of the desired goal. So let's move on to the next verse. Verse 34. Chanchalam himanaha Krishna pramathi balavadradam tasyam nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So in the previous verse, Arjuna has spoken about the difficulty of obtaining the samadrishti, the sambhav, because of the mind. And here he expands on that. So he describes the mind with 4 characteristics. He says it is chanchalam, is flickering or restless, pramathi, agitating, balavat, strong, and dridam, obstinate. Now, if the mind was chanchalam and pramathi, then Krishna might say overcome it. But then Arjuna says it's not an easy enemy to overcome because it is strong, balavat. Then Krishna might say reason with it. And Arjuna says that to reason with the mind is difficult because it is dridam, it is obstinate. So just like a strong disease does not recognize the medicine, the strong mind does not recognize the discriminating intellect. Now at one point it is flickering and restless, but at other point it is dridam. It is fixed. So it is fixed in its behavior of being restless. It is fixed in its behavior of pramathi. Because if it was just restless, then one might simply isolate the mind. Just like sometimes in classroom, there is a troublesome child, the teacher might just say, go and stand in a corner. But the mind is pramathi, which means that not only is it restless itself, it also makes that which is in contact with it restless. So when the child is asked to stand in a corner, but if he continues to create disturbances in the class, then isolating the child is not of much help. And Arjuna uses an analogy to say that it's difficult to control the wind. So you may open up your hand and try to control the wind, but the wind by nature is uncontrollable. Now, in this context of the position of the mind with respect to the other factors, the Vedas give a wonderful analogy which we see explained different. In Katha Upanishad it is said, Atmanam Ratinam Vidhi Shariraram Ratam Evacha, that the soul is the passenger and the body is the chariot. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the same verse is expanded further. So, the metaphor describes the situation of a conditioned soul. That the body is like a chariot and the senses are like horses. The object of enjoyments are like pastures. The mind is like the reins. The intelligence is the driver. And the soul is the passenger. So if the horses are very strong, which means if the senses are very strong, and uncontrolled horses will run after pastures to eat the grass. So uncontrolled senses will run after material pleasure. But if the mind is weak, which is the reins, if the mind is weak and the intelligence, which is the driver, is not very expert, then the soul or the passenger really cannot do much. He can keep asking the driver or intelligence to control the mind, but the intelligence is weak. The reins are weak, so essentially the horses will do what they want to do. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Verse 35. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabhao Manodurnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Chagrahayate. Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. So we see over here that Krishna is agreeing with what Arjun says. Right? He says, Asamshaya Mahabhavo Manudurnigram Chalam. What you say is right. Asamsham means is without any doubts. What you're saying is right. Very difficult to control the mind. But there are two things that you can do by which this becomes possible. Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena chagrahayate. So abhyas means practice and vairagya means detachment. So what is Krishna recommending here? And this is essentially the basis of even our advancement in as devotees. So Krishna is saying you practice the path of spirituality and you develop detachment from the material conception. So what is abhyas? Abhyas is doing what you need to do to make spiritual advancements. So for instance, for devotees, it is chanting the holy name, worshipping the deities, serving the devotees. So abhyas is we practice doing all that. And vairagya is develop material detachment. For instance, at the time of initiation, a disciple, they make two sets of promises. One is to follow the four regulative principles, which essentially helps to develop vairagya. Do not eat meat, do not take intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. So, by controlling one's unfettered exchange with the material energy, one is developing detachment. And the second vow is chant 16 rounds, which is essentially abhyas. Right? So this is the basis of spiritual advancements, which Krishna over here also says will help you in the advancement or Astanga Yoga. He addresses Arjun as Mahabhau. He says Asamshayam Mahabhau. So Mahabhau means mighty armed. And Arjun was famous as a warrior because he had defeated many famous warriors in battle. He had even pleased Lord Shiva in battle. So in a way, Krishna is telling to Arjun that you have been able to defeat such mighty warriors, O mighty armed one. So can you not defeat the mind? And if you are actually able to defeat this enemy called the mind with the weapon of yoga, then you are indeed Mahabhavo. Right? Now, if you notice that Krishna addresses Arjun by two names in this verse. So he says Sasham Mahabhavo, and then his last line he says Vairagena Chagrayate. The third line says Abhyasena tu Kaunteya. Right? So he's saying that, O son of Kunti. So when he's addressing Arjun as the son of Kunti, he's also evoking his own affection to Arjun. Because Kunti is the sister of Arjun, Krishna's father. So Vasudeva and Kunti Devi are brother and sister. So Kunti Devi is the aunt of Krishna and Arjun is the cousin. So two things are again being brought forth in this verse. The endeavor of the Jiva and the mercy of the Lord. Right? So recognizing that the mind is a formidable enemy, Krishna, he is presenting four things over here. First is talking about the practice, which is Abhyas and Vairagya. Right? Then he is talking about the endeavor of the Jiva and the mercy of the Lord. Right? So, how to endeavor? And endeavor comes in the form of Abhyas and Vairagya. That practice spiritual attachment while cultivating material detachment. And the reciprocation to this endeavor is the mercy of the Lord. So when Krishna says that Asamshaya Mahabhavo, that undoubtedly what you have said is true, then one would say that okay, there is a meeting of mind over here. Arjun says this is difficult, Krishna says it's difficult, so it's not possible. But then Krishna talks about the hidden weapon that a practicing devotee has, which is the mercy of the Lord. So he says, O Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, O one who is related to me, O one to whom I am affectionate, do not help. I will be there to, do not fear. I will be there to help you. But for my help to come, the endeavor should be from your side. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Verse 36. Asamyatatmana yogo dushprapiti mimatihi vashyatmana tu yatata shakyo vaptumupayataha. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. So Krishna is summarizing what has been discussed so far. So the first part of the verse, it recognizes the challenges that Arjuna has shared. The mind is unbridled. Then he says, yes, I agree with you. Self-realization is difficult work. But then he says that I have given you the ways to control the mind by practice and detachment. And one who is able to control the mind, that person is assured of success. And Krishna says over here, Mimataha. So when Krishna uses this phrase like Tat Shunu, now hear from me, Mimataha, my opinion, they're kind of like small flags Krishna puts in to say, pay extra attention to this. So, for emphasis, Krishna is giving both the negative and the positive. So, the negative is saying is that for one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. And the positive he's saying is, but for the mind, for the person whose mind is controlled, then success is assured. So this is to cover something completely, so that there is no grounds for any ambiguity. For instance, for practicing devotees, the injunction is always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Right? So one may think they are the same, but there are situations where one may not cover the other. So for the sake of completeness, for instance, one forgets Krishna due to material absorption, and one remembers Krishna due to spiritual practices. So when the injunction comes that never forget Krishna, which means that one should not be absorbed in material endeavors. And when the injunction is always remember Krishna, then the underlying instruction is always engage in spiritual practices. So similarly, Krishna is giving the negatives and the positives over here for suitable effect, that the mind should be controlled by renunciation, and one should strive by appropriate means, by the practice of the authorized scriptures. and then Krishna uses the word, says that one who strives by appropriate means. Right? So still the component of mercy is very important, because strive indicates struggle. Krishna says yatata. Yatata means, Prabhupada translates, while endeavoring, which means that while you endeavor, then depend on my mercy. So while you do this, while you control your mind through material detachment and spiritual attachment, and you do it steadily with all your conviction, patience and faith, then my mercy will descend on you. So Prabhupada says that trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. And Prabhupada once again is criticizing the so-called yoga practitioners. So when Prabhupada first came to the US in New York, one of the person that he engaged with was actually running a yoga school. And he invited Prabhupada to speak. And when Prabhupada started speaking about bhakti and devotion, he became very uncomfortable, because his focus was to have a very superficial level of engagement. He didn't ask his students to give up anything or to change the way of life. They would just come yoga, feel good, and have some kind of superficial enjoyment. And Prabhupada has always been very, very critical about this. Okay, so moving on. Verse 37. Arjunavacha ayati shraddhayopeto yoga chalitamanasa aprapya yoga samsiddham kam gatim Krishna gacchati. Arjun said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? So, when Arjun had initially expressed the difficulty in controlling the mind, Krishna had assured him that abhyasena ta vairagya, that by practice and detachment, this is possible. Now, this question by Arjun is a reflection on his pessimism about the success of the path. So, even though Krishna has offered him a solution, he is still asking him what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. So he says, Ayatihi Shraddha Yopetu. So Shraddha Yopetu means that he engages with faith, at least in the beginning. But Ayati is little effort. So he does not exert himself completely. And because of that, aprapya yoga samsamdhyam, that he fails to attain the perfection of yoga. Kam gatim Krishna gacchati. What happens to him? Next verse. Gacchino bhaya vibrashtas chenna brahmiva nashyati apratishtu mahabhao vimuda brahmanah pati. O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? So this verse is essentially elaborating on the question that Arjun asked. So having failed on both sides, right? So when a person enters the path of yoga, then the endeavor is to give up enjoyment. But because of the lack of real detachment, there is still a desire to enjoy objects. So such a person has given up the path of karma, which are activities that lead to the heavenly planets. And he has engaged in yoga, which is leading to liberation. But he is not able to complete this path. So he has essentially given up both the destinations. The destination of the pious person leading to heavenly planets or material enjoyment, or the destination of a successful yogi to liberation. So apratishtha means not having achieved either goal. Is he destroyed or not? So Arjuna is using the analogy of a cloud, that a materialist will at least enjoy some material pleasure and possible elevation to the heavenly planets. The aspiring spiritualist denies these all in search for liberation. But if he is failing in that endeavor, then he loses out both on material pleasure and liberation. So the question is that such a person is, says nashati, does he not perish? Now we know that the soul never perishes. So the perish over here is with respect to the endeavor. That isn't the endeavor futile. Arjun addresses Krishna as Mahabhavo here. If you remember some verses back, Krishna had addressed Arjun as Mahabhavo, O mighty armed one. So Arjun here is addressing Krishna as Mahabhavo to indicate that not everybody is like Krishna. So Krishna is Krishna, God, he is firm. Whatever he decides to do, he does it. There is no deviation. There is no gap between what he decides to do and what is done. But the jiva is fallible. So Arjun is talking about this fallibility to Krishna, and implicitly he is looking for some assurances, which is what we'll see Krishna giving. Verse 39. Etan mi samshayam Krishna chetum arhasi asheshataha tvadanya samshayasyasya chetanahe upadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So Arjun is once again signaling his complete dependence on Krishna. So he says, no one other than you can destroy this doubt, because you are the omniscient Lord of all beings. So similar mood we saw in chapter 2 verse 8, when Arjun takes shelter of Krishna for the first time. And we see the same mood of glorification and dependence. And the genuine mood of glorification and dependence and inquiry, it opens the heart of the Guru. So this question is dear to Arjun, because at one point this is what he was planning to do. He was planning to give up the path of karma and go into the forest and engage in meditation. Now, having heard the Bhagavad-gita for so long, he is also not confident about the results. So he's in a way asking, what if I actually did go to the forest and performed meditation and I failed? And because it is so personal and dear to him, he is evoking the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Prabhupada says that no one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of the material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present and future perfectly. But no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. So Prabhupada kind of extends this mood of omniscience, this mood of knowing, being able to differentiate correctly between right and wrong, from Krishna to his devotees, because of their devotees' close association with Krishna. Okay, next verse. Verse 40. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Partha Nevahanamutra Vinashastasya Vidyate Nahi Kalyan Kratkaschid Durgatim Tat Gacchati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, son of Partha, son of Pratha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So we see this immediate mood of reciprocation from Krishna. In the previous verse, Arjun, he had inquired in this mood of surrender, that no one but you can answer this question, please help me. And Krishna, he responds by addressing Arjun as Tata. So in the last line, Durgatim Tata Gacchati. So Tata is a term for son. And Tat is for, Tat is for son, Tata is for father. So a spiritual master also has the position of being a father. And Krishna, of course, is the Supreme Father in his original position. So when Arjuna is surrendering to him like a disciple or a son, Krishna immediately reciprocates and he says, Tat, my. So it's not, Tat does not just mean son, and Srila Prabhupada translates it as my friend. There is a strong Vatsalya bhav in this, that it is imbued with a lot of love and affection. And what is the assurance that Krishna is giving Arjuna over here? So he says that um, for an aspiring yogi, there is no loss of happiness of pleasures, material pleasures, and that is in the material world, or seeking Paramatma in the spiritual world. So Krishna uses the word he. So nahi kalyana krit kaschid. So he is means definitely, certainly, he will eventually attain what he begins to aspire for by the performance for yajna. Now Krishna does says that as long as he is following the correct method, he says kalyanakrit, he will never be deprived of either the material or the spiritual benefits. Durgatim. Right? Now the understanding is that he begins with the correct intention, follows the correct path, and because of weak-mindedness falls. In this case, Krishna says that he is still assured. Now if somebody is following the wrong path, even with strong intentions or with tenacity, or he takes it all the way to the end, nothing will happen. There will be no results that he will get. That is why Krishna, he specifies that kalyanakrit. Kalyanakrit means auspicious activities, those that are enjoined in the scriptures. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that most of the people are vikarmis in the current age, that they are sinful. And amongst those who are pious, they are in three categories: bhukti, mukti and bhaktas. So bhuktis are the one who are looking for material pleasure. The karamkandis, or even one who are looking to get to the heavenly kingdom, they are bhukti. Then the muktis are like the astang yogis, who are looking for liberation. And the bhaktas, Prabhupada says, a very small portion are devotees who are transcendentalists. So if success, Krishna assures success for those who are following the path of bhukti and mukti, how much more so for the devotees who are by nature very dear to Krishna. Okay. Next verse. Verse 41. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvatihi samaha suchinam shrimatam gehe yoga brashto bijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. So Krishna talks about two kinds of fallen yogis. One who fall in the earlier stages while they are still neophytes, and the others who fall in the more mature stages. So this verse talks about the yoga brashto who falls after the initial in the yoga rurukshu stage. In the initial stages of the yoga, he falls because of material desires. So such a person, because he falls due to material desires, Krishna awards his quest for material desires. So punya kritam lokan. So he acquires the destination of those who perform pious activities. Punya kritam. So even though he does not himself perform pious activities, but as a reward for his endeavor in yoga, he still gets the same destination as those who would have performed pious activities. Now remember, these are those who have reached the stage of Astang Yoga by following the bona fide process of first performing karma yoga, sakam karma, then nishkam karma, then gyan, and then astang. So these are not people who just whimsically take to the process of yoga, do some exercises, and then stop doing it. This is not for those. The practitioner is bona fide. Like he did develop Atmagyan by the performance of Nishkam Dharma, and then he matured from that into the quest for seeking the Paramatma, and then he falls. So he gets Shashvati Samaha Ushitva, that he gets this destination, the Punyakratam destination, and he stays there for a very, very long time. Shashvata Samaha Ushitva, until his desires for enjoyment ceases. And then from there he is born into the house of a Srimatam or a Suchinam. So Srimatam is a wealthy family, a pious and a wealthy family, and Suchinam is that one which is conducive to continuing the performance of the yoga family, the yoga practice. So Krishna still gives him this opportunity, that by taking birth in an opulent family, then he is, because of the wealth and the opulence, he is free to pursue his more transcendental goals. Or Suchinam, or because of being born in a righteous family, he is right from the beginning exposed to that aspect. So Prabhupada says that those who do not persevere to such an extent and who fail because of material allurements are allowed by the grace of the Lord to make full utilization of the material propensities. And Prabhupada also used this to describe the situation of fallen devotees, that those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. Okay, let's go to the next verse. Verse 42. Athva yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam etadhi durlabhataram lokachanma yadidrisham. Or, if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly, such a birth is rare in this world. So the previous verse was the destination of a yogi who falls after a little practice. The destination is Sushinam, Srimatam. That those who are pious and those who are wealthy. This verse talks about the destination of a yogi who falls after practicing for a long time. So this is more in the Yoga Rudha stage. And the destination that Krishna awards him is Dhimatam. That he is born in a so Dhimati essentially means meditation. Like in the Gayatri we have Dhimati, or in the first verse of the Bhagavatam we have Satyam Param Dhimati. Let us meditate on the Supreme Lord. So here it is Dhimatam is in a family that is mature in the practice of yoga. So because the person is born in this environment, and because of his previous strong impressions, he very quickly resumes his endeavor. So Prabhupada writes that, and he with lot of humility, Prabhupada gives us a glimpse into his own birth. He says, fortunately, both are spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Sri Srimad Bhakti Saraswati Goswami Maharaj and our humble self had the opportunity to take birth in such families by the grace of the Lord. And both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our lives. Later on, we met by the order of the transcendental system. Okay, next verse. So there are just a few more verses left in the chapter, actually 5 more verses. But in the interest of time, we'll cover this in the next recording. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.